This is one of a nearly dozen protests in New York City today alone. This one's in Weeksville near Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. On this map, it's one of the areas you see in orange or red. Those neighborhoods are both the lowest in income citywide and have the highest number of police calls. The researchers who put it together after detailed analysis concluded the two are linked strongly.
93% of the arrests were black and brown people.
David R. Jones talks about subway turnstile jumping and other minor crime arrests. He really knows what he's talking about. He sits on the board of the MTA, as well as leading the research that concluded that lower income communities of color are more likely to be policed.
This is all part of the mosaic that has gotten people so agitated who grew up in these communities.
People like Anton Lowe, who came to the gathering and protest in Weeksville.
And I'm not surprised at all. Like, even now, look how much police van is out here. Like, what we're doing is standing here talking. So, you know, it sends us the wrong sign, sends the wrong signal.
The research shows something more, that police respond most frequently in low-income communities that are gentrifying. Matt Swagler said his experience bears out what the research says.
We had somebody who was shot in front of our house, and a bunch of people around all called 911. And it took forever for the ambulance to come, but the cops were right there. This is just down the block. And they were trying to ask the guy all these questions instead of actually trying to, quickly facilitate keeping him alive and make sure it was okay.
Justin Feldman is an NYU researcher who specifically looks at income, race, and policing. He's found that not only are police more likely to be called to low-income communities of color, but people from those communities are far more likely to lose their lives in police incidents.
Lower income communities have higher rates of police killing than higher incomes. We also find that majority black communities have higher rates of police killing.
Higher rates of police killing, he says. He also says that newly introduced measures before the city council to divert up to $1 billion in NYPD funding to public health and youth programs and other programs that are non-police are a good start, he says.
Welcome back to Breakdown Friday. Joseph Ward, Professor Carl Tone Jones, Patrick Irvin. We are here talking about over-policing in the black community. Does it happen? If it happens, why does it happen? What are some of the solutions? What are some of the contributions to over-policing? Now, this comes out of a conversation that I had last week with a young lady at work. We were talking about a police precinct was going to be placed on the south side here in Tallahassee, within the heart of a black community. And the community stood up and spoke out, and the police precinct was not put there. So in the conversation with the young lady, she was saying that she was glad that the police precinct wasn't put there. I didn't disagree with her, but I did ask questions. And one of the questions that I asked is, okay, police precinct isn't there. Okay, so because she was saying our community is over police, that's why she didn't think the police precinct should be there. So our community is over policed, but what do we do about, well, how do we clean up our own community? Like, how do we make sure that we can decrease the crime in our own community to make it better, to help contribute to less over policing? Because all black communities don't receive the same amount of policing, but we know lower income black communities. So how can we do something different? But what frustrated me is she had a solution for how to keep the police out of the community, but there was no solution for how to clean up the community. So I wanted to bring that here because we are going to address the issues that we have with the police, but we do need to address the issues that we have within our own community, how we clean up our own communities and make them safer and less prone to policing. And because we're policing them better. So, of course, we've had bits and pieces of this conversation before, but we're getting into it now. So, Pat, my boy, let's get into it. Over policing. Based off the video and the conversation, everything that you know about over policing. Like, what are your overall thoughts about the black community? Is it over policed? And if so, why is it over policed?
Yeah, it's over police. I don't I don't think that's like up for debate. I think what's up to debate is whether or not, it's warranted.
Right.
Or whether or not it's justified. And a lot of that, is going to be place by place. My issue is twofold. On the one hand, you have a bunch of police in the community, which in theory makes the community safer.
In theory.
In theory. On the other hand, though, you have the way the police interact with the community itself. And I think that's the area that really needs work when we start talking about community policing, when we start talking about getting police, making the police a part of the community. You know what I'm saying? Like all of the initiatives you hear people talking about, police need to move into the communities they patrol. They need to live in those communities. People from those communities need to, be able to become involved in police in those communities, either through neighborhood watch or through citizen review boards that actually have teeth that can punish police officers or, fire them or whatever the case might be.
Real ones.
Real community citizen review boards. Even when you're talking about, smaller initiatives like the social structures of the community that keep things in place, the social norms, what's acceptable, what's taboo, in terms of utilizing community-based shaming principles. Like, if you're doing something that we as members of the community don't like, we can utilize social tools that get you to feel a sense of shame for doing it. You don't want to do it no more. Go ahead.
Just real quick, all Black communities aren't looked at the same. They aren't kept the same. They aren't policed the same. There are varying degrees of how Black communities are looked at, or thought about, or lived in, and are policed.
Right. And I think that's where the communities themselves have to take the lead on policing themselves. And I think like that sidewalk justice, as they call it, or the sidewalk policing, or I've heard it referred to many different ways, but that is a critical aspect of it. If people feel socially ostracized by doing a certain behavior in a certain location, they stop doing that behavior. Like, we're social creatures, and we as Black people need to take advantage of the fact that we are especially social creatures. We use it in all the wrong ways. If somebody's throwing a party, we turned up. If it's a dance craze or something we find fun, or whatever the case might be, we all about the group, all about the group, all about the group. We all, that FOMO hits Black people hard.
Yeah.
But then when it comes to the other aspects of it, like the rugged individualism, even that is something that as a community, like nowadays, we get mad at neighbors and elders and stuff for jumping in our business. That's a part of it. You know what I'm saying? Allow people to have access to what's going on in your life in terms of the community safety aspect of it. And then you bring shame back. You bring all of these other social things back. But I don't like anybody that says the communities aren't over policed is not somebody that's having a genuine conversation. Like, that's not somebody that's even trying to figure anything out. That's somebody that just want to have fun talking.
Gotcha.
In my opinion.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, I mean, I agree. I do agree that Black communities are over police stuff, but of course I'm posing the questions like I am so we can have a conversation. But I do agree that Black communities are over police. But IPC, why are Black communities over policed in your opinion?
Because they can be.
Boom.
I mean, if you want to maintain your supremacy over a group, then you have to consistently put methods or things in place to remind them that they are indeed under your thumb. And the best way to do that is by taking your what do they call it? Your civilian army and having them occupy places to keep the natives in line. It's just the same as if you go overseas to a country that's occupied by the American military. I mean, it's allowed to function, but you can sense, and you know, they'll even have officers, military officers playing soccer, doing infrastructure work in those communities, buying off the local grocers and outdoor markets. But at the same time, you understand that they are the law and it's within their power to enforce the law. And so it's the same thing that takes place here. Now, in regards to why it's specific to our communities, Black people weren't brought to America to prosper, to be a part of the American dream. Survivors, first and foremost, had America had its way, there would have never been a civil war. It wasn't to free Black people. The Civil War was fought over the economics of those economies and which one would have the most power. I mean, the institution of slavery was that indeed what it was. But that's not, you know, so even in the North, the relationships between Blacks and the police has always been adversarial. The first police force in this country were the overseers from the Irish immigrants that came to America under the indentured servitude policies. And once they started revolting with the Africans on these northern plantations in particular, a deal and an agreement was made. We will allow the Irish to join this enclave identified as European power or white power. And then in turn, your reward is we're going to give you weapons, we're going to give you land, we're going to give you access to wealth, but you also have to police those niggers that you was, you know, just running with. And so the relationship has always been adversarial. This is why when they pull up, they just pull up, they whoop ass and ask questions later. And I mean, I was kidnapped by cops when I was 16 for just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And so I can attest to the oppressive natures of cops because none of those police officers got in trouble. You know what I'm saying? And a 16-year-old seeing muzzles in his face, it should have been some consequences to that.
You know what's interesting about you saying that? I'm having a conversation with someone, and they felt like they were harassed by the police because they were pulled over by the police pulling out of a parking lot twice. And when you literally just talked about being taken against your will by the police as an experience. And it made me think about that. Like, okay, so this person over here is complaining, is saying, I'm being harassed by the police, but you were you're saying you were abducted.
Yeah. So, I mean, and listen, I don't discount the person who identified or stated that they were harassed, because that's a terrifying, in today's society, it's a terrifying thing to be a Black man and get pulled over by a police officer because your life is in danger, like you're on the clock.
Well, yeah, you know? Well, this person wasn't a Black man, so.
Oh shit! Okay, yeah. See,
yeah, it was. Yeah. But that's another thing that made me thinking about it, because we're talking about different experiences. Your experience as a young Black man, her experience as a grown Black woman. So
yeah, and listen, the sisters have an issue with this too.
They do.
They should, because there are many cases. There was a case, I can't remember the state, where a cop, raped like 17 different women. I think his name was Daniel
Mhm.
Holslaw or some shit like that.
I don't remember
And
his name, but I remember the case. Yeah.
yeah, and so when they asked, well, one of the young ladies that was on the stand, and these were all black women, and you asked them, why didn't you, call the authorities? She said, well, who do you want to call on the cops? And that's the understanding, because the blue shield, is something to behold. And I'm glad Patrick brought up that, this whole notion of moving police officers or moving police districts into neighborhoods or making police officers live in the city. Or it takes me to this thing where when the police officers black police officers would come to my high school and recruit, they would say, you want to make a change, join the police force, and then change it. You can make your change from within. And I always thought that was a silly connotation, because typically the police that was harassing me in my neighborhood were black.
Well, we can see that the ones who telling us that ain't made no change.
Right. Well, and that's because when you take a group of people who are unorganized, their essence gets absorbed by an organized culture.
Well, okay, and I'm glad you went there, because that's kind of where I was going. Because we are over policed, but a lot of our vulnerability comes from our refusal and or inability to unite and be able to better police and protect ourselves and be better to conduct ourselves. We are totally vulnerable to not just the police, any other group of people who want to do something to us.
Yeah. Well,
right.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
And and I was telling y'all prior to us going on air that I did a presentation for Black History Month presentation, and it was on the miseducation of the Negro. But and even studying for that and understanding a lot of this takes place because Negroes, black people, are miseducated and therefore ill-equipped to run our communities and societies.
Right.
But it also made me tap into other things that was going on around that time, such as the 1899 publishing of the Philadelphia Negro by W.E.B. Du Bois, where he came to the 7th Ward of Philadelphia, which happens to be the oldest black neighborhood in the country. And he did his study. He was invited by the University of Penn to identify the Negro problem. And at that time, it was always called the Negro problem. And it's funny because I was talking to my good brother, Brother Shamari earlier. And he was talking about the fact that you're never going to come to a solution if the only thing you ever do is see black people as the problem without examining the causes for the problem. And in the Philadelphia Negro, W.E.B. Du Bois, Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois identified the fact that the behavior of black people in that district, due to poverty, due to overcrowding, and lack of access to resources, that was the symptom. The problem was racism, white supremacy, locking black people out. And so that hasn't changed. It's transformed, but it hasn't changed. And now you consistently see Elder Neely Fuller stated, you're going to start to see more black millionaires, but you're going to see the conditions of other black people suffer.
Get worse.
Right. Because the image is, if I can show you all these millionaires, then it must be something you're not doing. When in fact, these are all tokens allowed to be millionaires just to state that fact, to justify the maltreatment or mistreatment of black people. We keep calling this shit a war. This is what happens when you're people that's being warred on.
It also reinforces rugged individualism. Because, all right, so going back to, I asked you why a black community is over police, but in extension to that, going back to what I said earlier as well, all black communities aren't created equal. They're not policed the same. They're not looked at the same, thought about the same. The more income, the residents of the community have, the more expensive the houses cost, the less crime, less poverty, less crime, less issues, right? The more wealthy Black people you have living around each other. They got rich people Negro problems. They got bougie Negro problems, but they don't have the everyday Negro problems of the working class or the working poor or even the poor. And so that goes into how those communities are perceived, how those communities are policed, even how the people within the communities treat their communities. The worse the community looks, the more it's policed. The more disparities, the more it's policed. But we know racism, white supremacy is the root cause of that. We understand it's the root cause. We're never going to overshadow that. That's the root cause. But it's also a symptom of our lack of the ability to help ourselves, or the lack of wanting to help ourselves. Rugged individualism breeds selfishness. Why should I help them? They don't want the help. Hey, they don't want to help us, so why should we even rock with them? The separation is there. The more, like, building off what you're saying, the more millionaires or the more people that buy into the idea of they're not in this position because they don't want it. They're not in this position because they're not working hard enough. Not understanding, well, you worked hard, but people gave you opportunities. People gave you access to resources. When you have access to resources and opportunities, and if you make good on the opportunities, you get access to more. If I never have access, or if my access is always limited, and and the only thing I'm surrounded by is disparity and vacant esteem, my imagination is even stunted. Mm-hmm. My ability to see beyond my situation is even stunted. It takes a special person to come from the hood, to grow up in these environments in the hood, to be able to imagine themselves out of it. That takes a special person. And we know those people do exist, but not enough of them exist. But a problem with some of those people who do exist in that manner is a good majority of them, their genius isn't nurtured. And when it's not nurtured, it's going to be stunted. And they fall victim to the community, and the cycle continues. But it's like we could help ourselves if we didn't move so individualistic. If those who had, you don't necessarily have to give all you have, but help others get access to resources and stuff. If we work together, if we work together the same way we'll work to be a part of white people's stuff, oh man, we'll be good. And our communities will be in a better shape, and we wouldn't have to worry about so much over policing, or we will be in a better position to combat the over policing.
Well, you wouldn't have to deal with it. But, like I said, man, and it's funny because I had to reread the Miseducation of the Negro, which, I think it should be mandatory. Everybody needs to, if you're Black in America, you need to read that book.
Yeah.
Fuck it, if you're not even Black in America, if you're Black anywhere in this planet, you need to read that book, because the principles that it speaks to applies to all of us. And let us not forget, the Miseducation of the Negro was actually a referendum to the first volume, which was the education of the Negro. You know what I mean? So when those answers wasn't, when the society didn't act accordingly, then you had to get the tongue lashing from the second book. And when it speaks to really is how we're taught not to support a community, not to create a community of proliferation, but also to run away from those things, and specifically the educated top 10%, the so-called talented 10th, for which he made several references to, and he was a part of. He was a Boule member, just like W.E.B. Du Bois, founded here in Philadelphia in 1906, Sigma Pi Phi. And one of the things that they were supposed to do, the top 10%, was to be that 10% that went out there in the world, in academia especially, gathered the information, gather the resources and all the know-how, and access and learn how to become those leaders and come back home and bring all of that home, not to disappear, not to create a aristocratic system. I mean, to be part of an aristocratic caste system for which they became, and seeing themselves as some sort of royalty to look upon and look down on all the peasants. Now, one of the things that's told to many Black people, even to this day, when you go to college, even if you're in a poor neighborhood, by your own parents, you're told not to come back. Once you get out of here, don't ever come back. Get as far away from this place as you can. There's nothing good here, waiting here. But no other community functions like that. Those communities lean on those people to come back and rebuild and restock and restore their communities. And so that's the miseducation part. At least a small sample of it. There's much more to it. But the fact that we don't come back to those communities and make an impact in those places leaves it to destitution, leaves it to be pillaged, leaves it to gentrification, shrinkage gentrification, and creates the conditions where now outside investors will benefit off of our absence, off of our carelessness, our recklessness, and therefore those communities won't receive any help or assistance other than police showing up pretty much to put a body in the back of a police van, the meat wagon.
The over police communities are the communities that soon won't exist anymore. Yeah. Pat, let's bring you back in here. You were talking about the precincts being put into the communities and or the police officers living within the communities. Let's expand on that. You think that's a good or bad idea?
I think in the right circumstances, it's a great idea. We're not in those circumstances.
So what in your mind, what is a good circumstance or a great circumstance?
A good circumstance, well, so the ideal circumstance in which the community, the police come from within the community would be a circumstance where I'm a fan of citizen review boards, period. So I think those need to be in place. Ones with actual teeth. And ones that are beholden to the community itself. Because we don't need nobody up there power tripping.
Right.
The other aspect I think that comes into play is there needs to be an outside entity outside of the citizen review board. Because this is my thing. You don't change. If you want to change the shape of something, you need to apply pressure two ways. The pressure can't just come from the inside and it can't just come from the outside. Otherwise, you get a structural collapse. And depending on who's pushing which way, somebody's going to get negatively impacted in a very bad way. Either the institution is going to totally collapse and cause all sort of systemic damage, which is going to fall on the heads of Black people, or the community is going to get crushed from the weight of the institution trying to bear all this extra pressure, which is kind of what's been happening. And Black people are going to get crushed because we sitting at the bottom of the totem pole.
Right.
So I think if you have the pressure externally being exerted, you have citizen review boards exerting pressure downward, the community exerting pressure, from an external source, and then you bring in those officers of the community, grew up in the community, live in the community, know members of the community that are going in and exerting pressure internally. That is a perfect situation for community-based policing of that nature to result. Now, there's also a cultural piece that, I'm obviously skipping over because that's a whole deeper conversation. But it's necessary that the cultural piece, people that are in that community need to be proud of being from that community. Like, that's a critical component of it. It's not just I'm proud to be Black. No, I'm proud to be from this neighborhood. Like, we do good shit in this neighborhood. This is the neighborhood I patrol. This is my beat. and I'm going to keep it in a place where I can continue to be proud of it. So I think if you have those pressures coming, and I think any tool will do, you just need more than one. Ideally, you have all three aligned with the cultural piece. I think that is an ideal world. But in the world we live in, we have none of those pressures. So, and we don't have a culture piece. And culture is how we've talked about this before. Culture is how organizations defend themselves from infiltration. Culture is how, systems protect themselves from radical change. Culture is how that happens. And that works for and against you. But I wanted to say one other thing about, because we were talking about this earlier today in school when we were talking about Nikki Haley's comments regarding America not being
racist. Yeah.
Country. Yeah, America has races, but it's not a racist country. And most of the kids agree with it. And it's understandable, right? Especially if you look at it from Nikki Haley's perspective. She's a Indian woman raised by Indian immigrants. She was saying, in my heart, I can't accept that America is a racist country. And first off, black folk, when somebody says in their heart, stop trying to convince them. But understand why she's saying that. She didn't, no other group, I hate to saying no other group, but in this situation it applies. No other group of people, period, has the relationship to America that black people in America do. They're not going to see it the way we do because they haven't experienced what we've experienced. A lot of them just caught strays. The gun wasn't aimed at them. Mm-hmm. It's a whole lot different when the gun is in your face versus when they shooting in that area and the person they meant to hit moved. It's a different experience. So it made me think about Walker's appeal. And I'm not going to get into it, but a lot of people know that they started really forbidding slaves to read in the 1830s, I believe it was, around by 1831. In the late 1820s, David Walker was he was the son of a free woman and a slave, a formerly enslaved black man, or a slave black man, I can't remember. But he was a freeman traveling through the South, writing these letters, getting the Negroes all fired up. This was in the 1820s. The man got white people so concerned that his writings, along with others, were the primary cause of why they started saying black folk can't read. There were four tenets to his writing that he was driving home. He was also the one that was saying black people, black slaves especially, you murdering your slave master is no more of a crime than you getting water because you're thirsty. Now, this man was saying this back in the 1820s, but he said our wretchedness is a consequence of four things. These are going to sound real familiar, and I'm saying this because this is in the 1820s. Our wretchedness is a result of slavery. Our wretchedness is a result of ignorance. Our wretchedness is a result of the church and the pastors and the followings of Jesus Christ. And our wretchedness is a result of the plan to colonize us. Well, in the 1820s.
Well, also thinking about that from a broader picture, you 200 years in by that time too. And so getting people to understand like why he can articulate that in the 1820s, because we about 200 years into slavery by this time in America, in the United States, we 200 years in. So and it's been cooking.
And that's exactly what I'm getting at, because here we are damn near to the year 200 years later.
And it still applies.
All of this shit still applies. All four of them. Ain't a lick changed.
And that's the result of post-traumatic slave syndrome. But it also is playing itself out and it's manifesting itself into the way that we relate to each other, our vulnerability, which also leads to us being vulnerable to the police officers. Because I want to take it from another angle as well. Okay. Because Pat, you mentioned pride.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned the police officers having pride in their community.
Mm-hmm.
Pride in the community that you patrol because you're from this community and you're proud to say, if we're from Tallahassee, I'm proud to say I'm from Lake Bradford. I'm proud to say I'm from South City. Proud to say I'm from Basin Street or wherever. I'm proud to say that. No, North Philly, whatever. What's your street, PC? What's your street?
I ain't telling nobody that.
Don't tell you gonna ask the man to dox himself. That is crazy.
They already on my
I'll be in your hood or whatever.
Hold on,
46th and Broad.
We can't do that.
Joe on some Vlad TV shit. That's crazy.
But
I give you area.
there you go. There you go. A Street. There you go. But community pride got to go both ways though. And one of the things that does hinder the community pride is the 4 things that Patrick just named. But we also know that a change in mindset or a change in the way we carry ourselves, how we view our whole communities, it is possible. Black people in different income brackets, their communities look different. The pride is different. We all have vacant esteem. All of us, no matter your income level, the collective esteem is low. But there are various degrees of it as well, too, though. And so, because I'm constantly thinking about when I'm driving around. Matter of fact, here in Tallahassee, Orange Avenue is like the street that's the heart of the South Side, the Black community. Mm-hmm. On the south side of Orange Avenue, there's a Jake Gaither community. On the north side of Orange Avenue, there's the Bond community. There's at least a $15,000 to $20,000 income difference between the Jake Gaither community and the Bond community. The Jake Gaither community has more people with college degrees, more higher incomes, more homeowners associations. It's the Black golf course. The Black golf course is in the Jake Gaither community, right across the street from the Bond community, where it's the hood and it's the back door to FAMU and it's the hood. And the Bond community, right across the street from the Jake Gaither community, don't get policed the same. And so looking at just different ways, and I of course not trying to take anything away from the white folk, but just looking at what could we do different, and not understanding that Black people in poor and lower income areas, it's going to be a bit different, but how can we make these communities better? How can we make these communities safer? How can we pour more into these communities to help these communities? Like, how can we get past this rugged individualism? Because if not, it's just something we're going to continue talking about forever. It's always been an issue, and it's like, when does it stop? Like, when do we do something different? When do we pour more into the communities? When do we have a breaking point or tipping point to where we just say, all right, this is enough? We got to make sure all our communities are in a better place, because we know policing is going to happen, but how can we put ourselves in a better position to not be so vulnerable? Like, when is that going to happen?
Go ahead, PC. I got mine locked in.
Okay. It'll happen when we actually adhere to our morals. Because the first line of morality is survival. If you're not surviving, then you're not being your morals have no integrity. And one of the first ways the best ways we can show that is understanding that we need to get on the same page as Black people.
Right.
We need to get on the same page. this whole concept, and we speak about it all the time, of not being a monolith is not worked. And the reason why people don't want a monolith is because the, dare I say it, arrested development that we suffer from won't allow us to mature past adolescence. And so it won't allow us to see the benefits of being a part of a collective. When you're a part of a collective, then people have to answer to your nation. And even though those black folk that they're not solidified, you'll find out that black people, when they get a little bit of bread and they start hanging around each other, they'll do shit to protect their lifestyle.
Yeah.
They'll show up and they'll make themselves known in those, so they'll have a conversation with, their representatives, their elected officials, and they'll put pressure on them to put pressure on those police precincts, and then you'll see a change. It's akin to, like I said, live in North Philly. My neighborhood is 98.9% black. It was 99.9%, but we had a few mixed couples move in. That's cool. But for the most part, you won't find too many straight whites around here. But there's an area of Philadelphia that's predominantly white, traditionally white. It's called Roxborough and Manayunk. And in those areas, and it's funny because I just happen to be in that area. So I saw these garbage collectors neatly putting back the garbage cans after, dispensing them into the back of the truck. And they were very careful about this. And I watched them. I recognized them from being the same guys that come to my block. But our shit is all over the place.
See?
They take our shit. I've watched them literally throw the shit and literally break plastic trash cans just because of how they toss them in the air toward our homes. Half the time, when you're trying to park your car, you have to get out of your car to remove the trash cans and the recycling bins from out of the middle of the street, because that's what they do in our neighborhood. When I bring it to the attention of people who have the ear of our local council person who is in charge of the streets department here in Philadelphia, nobody wants to get involved. Nobody wants to make waves. It's just too much. I'd rather sit around and complain about it and pray to the ether, pray to the Almighty that somebody does, that hears my prayer and somebody miraculously changes our conditions. We don't see the power we have in ourselves to change the goddamn conditions.
That's part of my issue, or part of the conversation that I want to bring is, we're not going to absolve white folk from what they do and them being the ultimate ones who created the conditions. But we do have to look at ourselves of, why are our conditions under our watch still continuing to get worse for ourselves?
Because they're not under our watch. We're not watching.
That our eyes closed.
Yeah, I think one of the most powerful things you can do is, I used to do it to my sons all the time, right? I stopped, and I think about that often. I shouldn't have stopped. But it's one of the things I used to do all the time. I used to look at them right in the face when they had done something that was against the code, because our family, we got a family code. We got a crest. We got all of that. And I used to remind them, you are Irvin. Irvins don't do that. What's wrong with you? Kind of instilling that pride, but also a sense of shame. Oh, damn.
Maybe I hear
right. I can't move like that. Again, that applying that social pressure. I think on a street level, black people that care need to go back in and start doing. If you're just looking for something we can do, just I'm thinking if I could go back to the Meadows, right? I don't know what it's like now, but that was I spent my.
It's worse. It's worse.
I spent I spent a lot of my formative years in the Meadows. Going back there and just being in the community as a positive role model and telling the kids, look, man, this the Meadow, like cleaning up the streets. And then when you see somebody throwing something on the streets, hey man, this the Meadows. We don't do that. Don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Joe.
I'm not against that. So what I'm about to say is not against
just
that.
say it, Joe. Jesus Christ.
Damn it, I'm gonna set it up how I set it up, damn it. Okay.
No, god damn it.
But my frustration when like you just said, people like that go into a place like the Meadows. It's the management of these complexes and the management of these trailer parks in these areas that run the people out. No, and usually black management that run folk like you out. That's going in to do that, and that's what I don't like. That's what I've seen too many times.
Well, this is what I would say, because that's definitely an issue. This is where, like, we kind of gotta meet the entire situation where it is. Like, if I were ever to move back to Tallahassee, I wouldn't buy a house in the Meadows.
I know.
Because that would put me in a situation on a lot of levels. But what I would do is be in the Meadows often. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? You can't run me out. I don't live here. You can't stop me from being here. I'm gonna be here, and because I grew up here. I'm gonna talk to the people here, and I'm not just gonna be talking. Like, I will grab a garbage bag and walk through the community picking shit up. Like, we've done that before, and I've seen in certain communities there will be people that'll throw trash by your feet, but there are also people that'll pick trash up and start joining in. There are also people that'll start commenting if you're there regularly. Like, that, you out here all the time, and then you can start having those conversations. It's a process. Is there something we could do right now that's going to turn shit over tomorrow? Absolutely not. But I think, like, for people looking for something to do, go do, like, if you're saying the hood always be dirty, motherfucker, go buy a big ass oversized broom and start sweeping the hood. It sounds crazy, but goddamn it, the conditions are crazy. Go do some crazy shit to make people be like, yo, what the fuck? What's wrong with this dude? He's out here with a goddamn a sweeping broom like he fucking in a gym somewhere, going down the street with this shit. And then be talking out loud to yourself while you're doing it. It's crazy. These dirty motherfuckers out here, they don't give a damn how they live. I care. You dirty. You dirty. You dirty. You dirty. You know, black folk, we superstition. We see somebody doing that, we ain't gonna mess with him. That dude crazy. So you might be, the only way I could think you would be safer is to do it with a white person. But that's in the wrong message. Look, the safest people in the hood is the crazy people and the white people. We've said this before. So be crazy, but be crazy spewing out positive stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just saying, like, there are all these ideas to do it, but I think the real issue is getting over the fear of doing it, because right now the kids run the block and everybody's scared of what these kids are going to do to them.
That's another issue right there too. That's another issue to add on to what's going on is the fear of we're afraid of each other, and the adults are afraid of the kids that they raised.
No. They're afraid of the children that they gave a cold shoulder to and shunned.
Well, the children they birthed, rather. I say that.
You know, because I've spoken many times locally here, nearly got into fights with people because of the disrespect that they've shown children who are out here dumpster diving, who are out here pumping their gas at the gas station, offering to push their carts or bag their groceries, and the disdain they show those children. When those children come back, there's a reason they come back with a vengeance. It's that old African proverb. It takes a village to raise the children. However, the second half of that proverb is, and if the children don't feel the love, they will burn the village to feel the heat, to feel some warmth. and we're watching the children who never felt love burn down the village.
Right. No, but no, you home run with that one. That's a great point. If you talk to the youth, they will tell you why they have no respect for the older generation. They'll tell you why they have no respect for a good number of supposed elders, what we call elders. They'll tell you why, because they don't respect them. And then you have a conversation with the supposed elders, a lot of elders, and they'll tell you that, well, I've had a number of them tell me that the children are just supposed to accept the disrespect. And my question to them was, would you just accept disrespect from anybody? No. So you expect these children to respect you while accepting disrespect from you?
Yeah.
That leads to more instability and vulnerability within the communities. That's adding to the conditions and the problems in the community. That's adding to the over policing. So in this, we do have to look at how we contribute to our own issues. We do have to look at it.
Well, there's another part of this too. Take the cops out and then see how people feel about over policing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, hey, look, I guarantee you it won't take long. I guarantee you.
We have seen it.
Yeah.
Because even though the cops are over policing our communities, they are not stopping any crime.
Right.
Oh, they took it to heart, that 2020 defund the police campaign. I have heard detectives say, we're not investigating any more murders. I've heard them say it. I was at a funeral and coming out of the funeral, a brother I was talking to a detective. And he said, you're going to go stop crime? He said, nah, we don't do that no more. This is a black man. We're all black men at that particular time. We don't do that no more. And I had heard rumors of that from other people who know people deep in the police departments. So we're seeing the only reason crime has dropped is because all the killers have been killing each other. Ain't too many more people to kill.
Go to Jacksonville. That's where they all at.
Well, but the other part of what PC is saying is not only are we seeing it now, we saw it in the 90s when crime was at its peak. The part of the 94 crime bill that we love to leave out is that we was begging the government to come into our communities to do something. Hillary Clinton
asked for it.
Hillary Clinton and her super predator comment is vilified now. At the time, there were a lot of black people. They was like fucking Chris Rock on New Jack City with the Clintons. You know what I'm saying? I ain't gonna say it, Joe, because I ain't trying to get you to edit. But that's what they was on. Like, please send the cops in. Please, our communities are out of control. Please, just get us one. Can you send us a man in blue? Can you send us the color blue? Can you change the street lights to blue? Can we get something blue? We'll do something to you to start with blue. Please, like.
And you're asking for the police presence because of the crime and the issues that are going on within our communities amongst ourselves that we have no control over.
Well, first of all, they ain't just asking for the police. Some of these cities are asking for the National Guard.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? To patrol their streets and communities, not knowing what they asked for, because apparently they know nothing of the Watts riots or anything of that nature. But we got to look at the construction of our communities, because they're really not communities. They're just places where black people live. It's a black society. It's not a community. And when you have a community, when you have a society that's the people who would be checking these young bulls will be the men.
Yep. And they're not there.
Because when I was coming up, prior to the crack cocaine era, and even during, it wasn't as wild as it is out here. You didn't get caught up unless you was part of the gang.
Right.
Or you might have been in the wrong place at the wrong time, but nobody was angling for you. And certain cats couldn't hang on the corner. I was not. They would let me come by, say hi, greet everybody, but then they would kindly and politely say, all right, little bro, where you about to head? Where you going?
I was
Yo, how
one
you doing in
as
school?
well.
You know what I mean? In other words, get the fuck out of here. This ain't your world. This ain't your lane. I tell everybody about the times when I was trying to buy weapons, and my cousins who were in the streets were like, "Nah, you get 10 years for every bullet." They would always find ways to deter me. You know, but we don't have that code no more because we don't have no OGs anymore.
Right.
And that's why cats are out in the street. These young bulls are out in the street. Ain't no man in the house except for the one that's coming in at 2 and leaving by 5.
It was strategic to remove them OGs too.
Oh yeah, that was the target of the crack cocaine era. You remove them, get the parents, get the mothers hooked on drugs, and now you have children running the communities.
So you saying the police and we asked for a backfired on us because it took our OGs out?
Well, not only did it take, I think that it was, I think that it was a lot more into it. Like we really can't get into how deep it goes, but
it gives the deeper. But you know,
yeah, the war on drugs was the war on the black community, and the war and the way to destabilize us, to demoralize us, and to maintain us into perpetual ineptivity. I think I just made up a word. I'm Jesse Jackson tonight. Perpetual ineptivity.
Like Eric Dyson.
You know what I'm saying? And so we have been inept and basically castrated as a community. So as a bunch of eunuchs, how can you go out there and tell these young boys who do have nuts, right? They may not be masculine in the way they operate, but they operate in a way where they have more heart than the eunuchs that were cut out the years before. So now most men are afraid to come back to community and just stand and have a conversation with these young brothers. Because if you would regrow your nuts, if you would have a conversation with these young brothers, I have them all the time. And these are young killers out here. People who you see on these videos talking about the bodies they're dropping. And I can have a conversation with them. Now, I'm not able to deter all their life because I'm only one small aspect of it. But imagine if 20 brothers appeared on a weekly basis, checking in with these young brothers, taking their temperature, seeing how, you know, then you become the police. You become what, you know, I'll never forget that in the Port Richmond area of Philly, this is about 10 years ago, somebody had got shot. It was like a shootout or something. You had women on the news saying, "We don't want the police out here. We'll take care of our own." The women in that community said that. So that, and the next thing you know, you didn't hear a peep of violence and crime in that community for a few years. Sure, it happened, but their community addressed the issue. We're not organized to address a goddamn newspaper route anymore. And we don't want to be.
That's why.
And that's what I'm saying. And it keeps messing me up because, like I said, that second, third, fourth time of reading Miseducation of Negro, it speaks to the fact that we would choose leisure and a good time over doing the work that's necessary for the proliferation of our communities. So while you see, you think, like, we talk about the relationship values and the relationship goals, well, who are the people having the kids? So when you're instilling this in it, and this is what you're talking about, what values of community are you talking about in regards to, you know, maintaining the safety of the community? The only time we look for leaders in our communities is when we're looking for scapegoats. Otherwise, can't nobody tell us what to do.
When things are good, we don't care about that stuff. But when things get bad and people start dropping and bodies start dropping and things start missing and things don't go our way, that's when we cry foul. You know,
but Joe, we don't even care then. We only care when it happens to us.
That's what I'm saying. That's when we cry foul, is when it blow up in our face and we can't do nothing about it. And it hits home. You know, that's when we really care. And that's the problem. We got to do better than that. We understand why over policing happens. You can complain about it if you want, but there are things that we can do to help our community get better. You just articulated a group of people who decide to take their communities in their hands, like Pat talked about citizen review boards earlier.
Let me just, because I know you're about to wind down. I just want to drop one more thing. If we follow Dr. Claude Anderson's power economics or powernomics, model, in which you utilize the resources you have, because even in these so-called poor neighborhoods, you have a multitude of business from people from other nationalities that seem to be able to take their children to college and also buy homes in neighborhoods that their businesses is not in, and live quite well off of these poor people that don't seem to have anything to live with. If we were able to take those pennies and put them together and start buying our politicians and start improving our academic systems to actually do something that's going to lead to the improvement of our communities. If we start and we buy our politicians, when you buy the politicians, you own the police. And if you don't own your politicians, you don't have no say so with the police in those neighborhoods.
See, you talking that black power stuff now.
Power respects power.
You talking that stuff that take real work, sweat equity, and like we got to like each other and stuff like that. So you mean tell me that we can't just get away with just doing what we've been doing and reach them goals? Who my granddaddy named Claude.
Hey.
To my Claude from life.
Then we're going to catch flights, not feelings.
Well, but you actually can get away with it. You might be able to, but your community won't.
Right. I mean, because yes, everybody on here agree we need to employ Dr. Claude Anderson's plan, but we got to get our mind right first. Like we got to get over the insanity. We have to see ourselves worthy of employing the plan. We have to see ourselves worthy of being able to benefit from having a plan of action for ourselves that has to benefit our community.
Well, I would rephrase that though, because I think the individual sees themselves as worthy. I think that we just don't see anybody else as worthy. Like,
I don't know.
Nah, because when shit hit home, look, ain't nobody screaming louder in the community right now on the national circuit than the people that some shit has happened to.
Mm-hmm.
Well, is that due to them seeing themselves worthy, or because they victimization chip kicking in?
It's both. Look, our worthiness is tied to our victimization chip, and even in that, if you were to talk to those people beforehand, a lot of them, what they always say, right? Like, I never thought this would happen to me. This type of stuff, they view it as it's beneath them. That stuff would never happen to me. They got a complex. The victimization chip triggers. Boom. It did happen to you. Hold on. What the fuck? This happened to me. When you listen to them talk, they not talking about the community. They talking about themselves. When you listen, all of the people, the mothers, the fathers, the aunties, the uncles, the people that were victimized, when they get up there and start talking about life and the changes and the oppression and the this, they not talking. They say the system need to change because if it happened to me, it could happen to anybody. That second part is to make everybody else feel good about listening to the first part.
The wild part about that, Pat, is the fact that it happened to everybody at some point. And that person that's screaming that shit wanted to mind their business then. And the people who you're talking to now, remember when it happened to them, you mind their business. So now I'm going to mind my business. And that's this vicious cycle that's going to continue until everybody starts minding each other's business. And for other purposes than dropping tea and spilling tea.
The only reason I question worth and how they view themselves as far as the worth is it worth or is it delusion? Because if it was worth, like, you wouldn't choose to continue to allow your environment, even your personal environment, to be what it is. So is it like, I hear what you're saying, but is it like
both?
Is it the
it's entitlement?
Does it look like worth, but it's really delusion?
No, it's entitlement.
Yeah, it's entitlement, it's delusion, and in their minds is worth. I think all of those things in reference to the black community are basically speaking to the same thing, because the black community doesn't have a true sense of worth.
Right.
It doesn't.
Right.
It's like when you talk to the dude that wants to be married to Beyonce and he mad at Jay-Z, but he ain't never met her before. Or you talk to the female who got all sorts of problems and is shaped like a backwards turd. But she thinks she could get Idris Elba. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you ask them, they'll tell you, I'm worth this. But you say, okay, well, what is reality showing you?
Yeah, your presentation
what's
don't
reality showing you? They say, well, that's when the delusion kick in. Well, no, it don't matter about that. I know my worth. I just got to be patient. I'm gonna get it. Okay, and then that's also when the entitlement kicks in. Like, oh, so your reality is showing you different. You ain't putting in no worth to get it, but you think you just deserve it because you exist. Oh, that's entitlement. So I think all this shit is the same.
But why can't Lizzo have Captain America?
I mean, she can, but Captain America don't want Lizzo. Like, that's
hey.
You can have whoever you want if they want you back, but if they don't want you back,
she deserves them though.
Hey, worth is a word. It is a word.
Like, so that's what I'm saying. I think black folk, it's another manifestation of the rugged individualism, and I think our rugged individualism is heavily influenced by fear. I think our individualism is different from the national American individualism.
Right.
The American individualism, I think, is rooted in just arrogance and this idea that we're better than you. That's not what black people got going on. Black people are scared to find themselves in a situation they can't handle.
But they have the luxury to be individualistic because the system is already rooted in place.
Yeah, but black people, so this is where I say, like, because I agree with you. This is where I say, like, black people have taken on a lot of the traits of the dominant white society, but the driving force behind it is totally different. So it come out all fucked up.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we made cornbread out of pancake mix. It ain't the same.
No, I get it, and I understand that analogy, and it's true. And I think, you know, for a very long time, black people here in America have been operating from a place of fear, the fear of extinction, annihilation, the fear of not being covered, protected. We don't have a nation. You know, we're out on, you know, the safety net of America only works for whites and those who white people import. Black people were not imported here. We were smuggled into this bitch. And therefore,
you got to be able to make your own net too.
That part. And see, that's the part but it's, you know, as a therapist, man, one of the craziest things I've seen, well, I'm going to say counselor. That sounds better. As a counselor, one of the craziest things I've ever seen, right? People get technical with this shit, is trying to get somebody to not operate in fear. Like, to get them outside of once fear has touched somebody and they feel vulnerable,
it's over.
It's over. Yeah, it's like, so for instance, you know, I'm a big dude, 6'3", you know, I could be a defensive end if I, you know, got into the gym, back into the gym like I need to. But I don't ever have a fear of being overpowered, pent down, and things being done to me against my will. Not in that fashion, right? But most women I've talked to, especially if they're smaller in size, they have that perpetual fear in more ways than I can account for. And there's no way on planet Earth I can relate to that. So to try to talk somebody out of that type of fear, especially if they have been violated, is a different form of trauma that we're used to. Now we know that in order for them to move forward, they're going to have to address that fear. But getting people to address their fear is the biggest obstacle, specifically when those who impose the fear mongers, have shown you that you have good validity, good reason for being fearful. Black people have faced the worst wrath of this white man. We've seen it, the bloodlust of the white man. We've seen it, and our epigenetic memory kicks in. Patrick was telling the story a few weeks ago about a little white kid in his classroom who, when he got mad, all the tough corner boys shut the fuck up. You know what I'm saying? Because of what is internally been programmed into us for generations. And so that's another aspect of this that kicks in. And then the fear, we don't have to say, in order to succeed, you got to be willing to be okay with failure. But we're afraid to fail because we haven't often been given the opportunity to recover. And the biggest reason for that is what you said, Joe. We haven't provided it because we have been thoroughly miseducated.
Hey, I agree with everything you just said. What I am going to say,
ice cubes.
What I am going to say in addition to that too is you can harbor the fear all you want. We could continue to harbor fear, and we could continue to use that as a reason or excuse, whatever word you want to use for it. But if we don't clean up the mess in our house that they made, it's going to keep getting worse. Because think of the mess that they made as a ever expanding black hole that's sucking everything in. If we don't clean that up, it get worse and they get worse and they get worse. So we could be as afraid as we want to be, but we still got a damn mess to clean up. And if we don't clean it up, then we just we are puppies howling at the moon.
Ow.
So with that being said, man, we're finna go ahead and close this thing down. It's been another good discussion with my brothers. Do that howl again.
Ow.
There you go. There you go. That's one of them. It's one of them house dogs. He been fed good food.
Hey, I buy that for $1.
Hey, fatlifestation.com, 7 p.m. tonight. Fatlifestation.com. Make sure you tune in. Link is in the description. Yeah, man, get it together. Keep complaining. Joseph Ward, Professor Carlton Jones, Patrick Irvin. We is Audi 6000s.